today's episode, we'll be featuring a phenomenal story about a man who faced death and survived, giving him a fresh perspective on life. John C. was born with a heart condition, but didn't know just how vulnerable his life was until his near-death experience after overworking himself physically and mentally. Once his heart stopped beating, John went through a spiritual awakening. He details his entire experience and how it transformed his perception on the world. John, welcome to the show. Welcome. Thanks for being here today.
I'm glad to be here.
Nice. All right. So before we get into the actual experience of yours, I'd like to know a little bit about you. Who are you? Who is John C? John Doe, John C. Who are you?
I consider myself just, an average person. I grew up, I grew up in what I would consider an average family for the area that I'm in. As far as like the values that I was taught, I'm a bit of a workaholic. I'm a small business owner. I just kind of, just live life one day at a time.
Yeah, that's awesome. What would you say your childhood was like?
Terrible. I honestly just had a terrible childhood. Went through a lot of traumatic experiences. I grew up in extreme poverty. My grandmother raised me. She did her best to teach me and my sister right from wrong and the kinds of things that were acceptable and expected in our day-to-day lives, and just did her best to provide. But there was a lot of background just instability. When I look back at my childhood, I reflect more on, the times where, we were having family moments and, the lessons I was taught than the actual experience itself.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Where did you grow up, John?
I grew up in a small town in central Louisiana. Real rural area. Lots of people with the same 5 or 6 last names. So, just real small, tight knit community. It wasn't the kind of place where everyone knew everybody, but everyone knew someone you were related to.
Right.
So, just small community.
Would you say it's a very religious town?
Yes, absolutely. It's a very well-known open secret that the churches basically run everything. So, just one of those, just very classic small Bible Belt towns.
Interesting. Were you raised Catholic or Christian yourself?
I was raised Southern Baptist.
Interesting.
Nice. Would you say that religion had a huge impact on your life?
Yeah, I actually would. I grew up in a church. I struggled with some very deep religious questions and trying to analyze my own perspective from a religious standpoint throughout my young adulthood. So it's not something that's ever been far from my day-to-day experience. So yeah, I'd say that, religion definitely affected me a lot.
Yeah. I'd be interested to know how this sort of evolved as your story sort of unfolds. We will come back to this at a later stage because, we do know you to be a very spiritual person. So, that's so where does your story begin then?
Well, my story actually begins Probably around the sophomore year of high school. Uh, I was, like I said, I grew up in very, very extreme poverty, and I also happened to be extremely smart. I was being groomed for a lot of Ivy League opportunities and things like that. And, there were a lot of people in my family that didn't really have a lot of opportunities, or they had not been able to take advantage of opportunities that were given to them. So I felt like there were a lot of hopes riding on me as far as like, actually doing something with my life. But, I got kind of burnt out, didn't
Mm.
really want to do anything like that. Just kind of wanted to live an average life, work an average job, not make any waves. And when I made that decision, I kind of felt like I was letting my family down.
Mm.
So there was just a lot of internalized guilt and disappointment. And it wasn't like anybody just came after me. It was like, "Oh man, you're screwing everything up. Why'd you let us down?" It was just, something I internalized. And, so I kind of retreated into work after I left high school, and I just kept putting more and more stuff on my plate. Wasn't eating very well. I wasn't sleeping a lot at all. I was getting between 2 and 4 hours of sleep. I was just kind of running myself into the ground
Mm.
from the time I was like 16 or 17 until the time this event happened when I was uh, somewhere around 20.
Mm. Right. Yeah, that sounds hectic.
So that's where the story starts. Is just kind of that period of time in my life where I just wasn't letting myself be still so that I didn't have to, focus on my own thoughts and just trying to escape, and then uh and it was just like really dangerous for me because I have a heart condition that I'm not supposed to be overworking. I'm not supposed to be stressing too much, and I was doing very physical labor.
Mm.
I was going to the gym for hours a day. I was not getting adequate sleep.
Mm.
So I just kind of set myself up to fail.
Right.
What was this heart condition called?
I was born with like a heart murmur, had like a small hole in my heart. And as that healed, it turned into like a very slow heartbeat and I have an arrhythmia. And uh, I'm sure there's a couple of other technical terms in there, but basically just a weak heart.
Mm.
Not supposed to be overtaxing myself.
Mm.
Mm.
Did you find yourself like hospitalized a couple of times because of this?
When I was a kid, it was really concerning. I went to the doctor once when I got older, but it uh, just wasn't something I was ready to accept. So I just took like some basic advice from the doctor, and I never got on any medication or anything.
Mm.
But I've been to a doctor once or twice.
Right. Yeah, and I suppose with like the lack of medical care or insurance or whatever, that must have also been, quite heavy.
When you were 20, after high school, you started working yourself and you were overworking. And you said you have a slow heart. So what happened? What was the point, this event when it started?
Um, so the actual uh moment that it happened, I'd gotten off work. I just got back from the gym, uh, and I decided that I was just gonna break character and actually take an early night. And for me, early is like 9 o'clock.
Mm.
So I just kind of laid down on the couch and like I kind of got a little lightheaded and I felt my heart just kind of start skipping beats and just kind of stopped.
Mm.
That's just very abruptly just stopped.
Mm.
Uh, so there was that's what happened there.
Do you usually have like when your heart stops, I'm not a doctor or anything, but is it almost instant where you lose consciousness, or are you still conscious for a bit?
That's the only time I've ever had my heart stop.
All right.
Like I have arrhythmic episodes every now and then, depending on how well I'm taking care of myself, and like, I can feel that. That's not a comfortable feeling to have. Is when your heart loses its rhythm, it skips a beat. As it's commonly said, it's painful. But I had never had my heart stop before, so I'm not a real expert on that. I did lose consciousness though, so yeah.
So were you aware? Were you conscious that your heart stopped and then you lost conscious? Did you know your heart stopped beating?
Yeah, I was like laying down. I was just kind of like passively observing myself, because like once, like when your heart starts playing with you, like you're not just focusing on something else. That's something that
Becomes
absolutely grabs your attention immediately. And when it, like I was like, okay, so like, okay, a rhythmic episode, it's gonna skip a beat and then it'll level out, and then it skipped another beat, and I was like, and what I mean by like skipping a beat is like basically, like say my resting heart rate at the time was like 40 something beats per minute. So um, it's like I have, when you're laying in bed and you're kind of just relaxing, you can feel your heart beating. You feel that rhythm, and then like my heart would like skip one beat and then like try and catch back up. So just like kind of lose its rhythm, and and then it happened again. So it's like it was still beating. It was just like kind of like not quite sure what rhythm it was supposed to fall into is the feeling I was getting. So it did that, like a couple of times within the span of a few seconds, and then it just kind of stopped beating.
Gosh.
It was terrifying actually. It was just like, I noticed it and I was like, oh well, that's not good. That sucks. And then it happened again. I was like, oh man, that's really not good. And then it just, it stopped.
Was the idea of
So,
like death floating around in your mind? Did you think you were dying?
oh yeah, like that was the immediate thought in the forefront of my mind was like, yeah, like I'm having a heart attack was my first thought, but then, I was like, either way it goes, I'm dead. This is it. It's over with. I went a little too far this time.
Right.
They say like just moments before dying, a person's like entire life flashes before them. Did that happen to you?
No, like in that exact moment, the only thing flashing through my mind was, oh my goodness, don't, please don't let this be it. I didn't really have a whole lot of life to flash before my eyes.
Yeah.
No, so I didn't experience that.
No. So you passed out, and what happened when you passed out? Did you quickly regain conscious?
So when I lost consciousness, I actually regained consciousness somewhere else. Like I was not, from my perception, I was not on Earth anymore. Like I was in a completely different realm. And it was, I'd like to say it was disorienting, except for like it was not uncomfortable at all. Like it was very, very peaceful. So I was, I just like kind of came to, and I was just out in this wide expanse of space, not like outer space, like physical space, just this wide expanse. And I just felt perfectly okay. I felt powerful, full of energy, full of life and potential, and completely calm and at peace. And I remember, um, colors most of all. Like everything was like this weird shifting, I guess you could call it psychedelic, kind of like purplish mixed with like, you know, greens and reds and blues and like just like every color that you can imagine, and colors I don't have names for, just kind of like mixing into the background. Um, and it was just, it was completely divine.
Mhm.
Just absolutely no other word for it. I just felt physically, mentally, spiritually completely okay. Like that's the only word. Like it wasn't amazing. It wasn't awesome. It was just like everything was okay. Just no worries, no stress. Everything was good to go. I remember that like there wasn't like any real perception of time, or even physical sensation was weird as well. Um, it there there was no pain. Like every single cell in my body just felt perfect. Like this was exactly how, if they could exist in a perfect state, this is how they would feel. I felt like I was kind of glowing just from the sheer pleasure of the experience. It was, kind of tantric, I'd say. It was just, it wasn't overtly pleasurable. It was just amazing. It was just everything was as it was meant to be. Um, and then there was just knowledge. Like I felt like everything was more than physical. It was just the colors weren't just a color. It wasn't just light. It was also made up of like pure energy and knowledge. I didn't question anything. If I had a question, it would have there wouldn't have been a question. It would just been I would have automatically known the answer to the question that was about to come to my mind. And I just perceived I was not on Earth anymore. I was in, like a higher realm. So it was, uh, man, it was amazing. I could talk about just describing that all day. Um, but, after, some time had passed, I guess, I kind of started to notice that there were kind of places out in this space. Kind of like if you were floating in space, you would see planets like off in the distance, and it was kind of like that, except, it wasn't like round orbs with atmospheres. It's like, you know, you could tell, or I could tell by looking, I'd see one and I'd say, okay, um, there's a world, there's an existence, there's a place. And, I kind of started to wonder like, hey, what's going on? What's this? And as soon as I wondered that, I was in one of those places, and this is the one I remember the most. It was like, um, I always just describe it as kind of like, a beachfront in Hawaii where, everybody's just kind of, because there were people there, and everybody was just kind of mingling, like it was like that perfect sunset hour where it's not too hot, not too cool, and like everybody's spirits are high because this is, the end of the day mingling, with the beachfront bars, and uh, we were just, kind of hanging out, and it was just like really, really cool. And I was there for, a good while. And then once I won't say tired of it, but once I guess wanted another experience, I went out of that place and to another place. And I went through several places like that, and I had different experiences there, and some were completely mundane and some were completely uh, just weird, is how I would describe them. But there was never any questioning of anything. It was just everything was completely natural, completely as it should be. Um, and like I said, there was no real perception of time for me. It was, it could have been 10 seconds and it could have been 10 million years and it would have been the exact same thing.
Right.
And after a while, I just kind of flying around space, I guess, around the outside of of everything, just relaxing and being at peace. I kind of noticed there was this kind of out of the way place I'd never seen before. And I went towards it, and there was like this dark entrance to it, which was really weird because like the other places I just kind of like imagined seeing a plate with a dome over it. And that's the closest thing I could describe. The closest thing I could say to describe this. But this place, it was like an actual like cave mouth or entrance, and it was like dark there. And I was like, man, this is important. And I went in there, and when I went inside, there was this room. It was a completely round room, like a perfect sphere. And then like there was this walkway out to the middle with a stand with this black orb on it. And it was about the size of a beach ball, maybe a foot across. And that was another weird space. It just kept changing size. Like one moment it'd be, the size of, it might be 100 or 200 yards across as far as diameter. And then like a few moments later, it might be, maybe 10 or 15 yards. And it was, it's just the way things were. Again, I never questioned anything that was going on. It was just like moving with the energy of the general atmosphere of the place. But I walked down this walkway and I went towards this black ball, and I actually had curiosity, which is weird for this place, like because there was no, like I said, there was no questioning. It's like if there was anything you wondered about, you automatically knew the answer. You automatically knew what was going on. But I did have genuine curiosity towards this object. I wondered, like, what is this? And as I walked towards it, I went to grab it, and like it just suddenly hit me that like, I'm no longer on Earth anymore. I'm no longer part of the realm of, the existence that I knew, and that if I touched this ball, it was going to take me back to, regular living. It was going to take me back to mortality and humanity, and I wasn't going to be at peace with the world and the universe anymore. I was actually going to just be a normal human being with normal human problems and issues and experiences. And it was overwhelming. I kind of broke down. I sat down like on that walkway and I cried because it wasn't so much that I didn't want that or that I was scared. It was more like I was choosing between eternal perfect existence and then going back to being a human. And in that moment, they seemed like perfectly equal and valid choices. So I just knew that like realistically there was only one choice, and so like I touched this ball, and then I came back to myself in my body. I came back to, I was laying on the couch that I'd laid down on before all this started, and time had passed. It had been, a couple of hours. And, like, this is going to sound so crazy, but like for a second, like I was physically glowing.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
it was, like there's no one around who can verify that, but like in my mind, like I saw, like I was physically like just this golden light poured out of me for a second.
Right.
And, that's kind of how that experience ended. I got up and, I was like, just my mind was going crazy. Like it was just too much to process. And, I was like, I felt good, like I felt better than I had ever. And, physically, mentally, and I was just like, yeah, I'm just gonna go to sleep. I've got my first thought was like, I have work and like, I've got to be up for work in like 3 hours, and I just kind of, I kind of put that on a shelf to be examined, and, you know, just went back to the normal routine.
That's amazing.
I have so many questions
yeah.
right now for you, just from like swallowing them.
So, I mean, the way you described it, you said like time didn't really have, like there was no way to describe time in this experience. But you were knocked out for a couple of hours, but it felt like lifetimes.
Yeah, that's really
couple of
interesting.
millennia. That's
like
that's
looking back on it as a human being on Earth and seeing how long it took. Did it kind of seem like, yeah, that could be about right? Or was it like, oh, it flew by way?
No. Yeah, they're like looking, like my immediate examination of it was like, there's no way this was all possible in that period of time. Because like I said, I went through, it's not like, it wasn't like when you're having a dream and like in the dream time passes and it's, you might live out a few days or whatever in the dream, because like when you're dreaming, if you're lucidly dreaming, if you're cognizant of what's going on, you can see how time doesn't exactly sync up. Like your dream mind is telling you like, yeah, this is a year, this is 2 years, but like physical time, it's only been an hour or so. But it was a full experience for me. It was, hours and hours and days and years and eons really of fully experienced, just things going on that, there's no way that my mind could have compressed all of that into just a couple of hours. It was, and I'm no scientist. I'm no, I don't know, I'm no neurologist or anything, but I forgot what the question was. I'm sorry, but it was, I never had the thought that like, this is just my mind telling me that it never synced up for me. It really never did.
I found it interesting that when you were experiencing this, you were talking about how like you knew everything almost, like knowledge was available to you and you had it, but then there was also no questioning because you knew everything. But once you got close to this black orb, that's when your curiosity started to build again. And that's like, it's a very human thing to have, to be curious, to want to know what it is. What I want to know, because I know you had a religious background, did you think you were in heaven or hell? Did you think this was like an afterlife while you were experiencing it? Did that ever occur?
The understanding that I had was like, this is the closest description that we could have for some place like this on Earth would be like Nirvana.
Yeah.
Like I was aware that like that there's no way you can be here in a physical body, it was, yes, to me it was like an afterlife. But it wasn't heaven or it wasn't hell. It was just like perfect existence.
Mm.
You know, just the culmination of spiritual perfection.
Did you exist in that space in your physical being? Like if you looked at your hands, did you look the way you look here on Earth?
Yes. Yeah. Like, cause that was the first thing I did was, like when I kind of looked at my hands, like, what's going on? Am I in a dream? What's going on? And like, it was my physical form. And so I don't know if like I actually just like teleported off my couch into this other place, but like the cognizance I had there was of my own being. So it was like I guess.
Yeah. When you went to that Hawaiian looking beach place and you said you saw other beings, other people there, was there anyone you recognized? Did you know anyone?
I wouldn't be able to say so off the top of my head. Not anyone that I associated with on a day-to-day. There also weren't like a lot of people there. Like the impression I got was like this was just like the waiting room at the airport. Like we're all milling around here waiting to go link up with other people and go to other places. And I was 20. So, if this was what I thought it was, there weren't a lot of people that that I actually knew who would have been in this place still waiting for others to move on. So I didn't actually see anyone that I recognized. Not off the top of my head anyways.
So when you were the black orb is just so interesting to me. And at that moment you realize, because before then there wasn't really any questioning, any curiosity, but you knew at the moment when you saw this black orb, you had to make a decision to either go back, to Earth or go back to real life or stay in this, this realm of content. Do you remember how you made, like what drove you to go back? Do you remember that feeling, or do you remember what happened?
I remember like saying to myself, I still have things to do. There's still so much that I can do. If I went back, I would still have a purpose. It wouldn't just be that, hey, you're being kicked out, go find something to do. It was more like, if I choose to go back, I'll have a purpose. I'll have, something to make the experience worthwhile. And that's why I was crying, because I was like, it wasn't like, if I was just going to be like ejected because, it's not my time yet or something like that, I'd be upset. But it's just like, with just the general energy of the place, there'd be no way to not accept that. But I was being clearly presented with a choice of like, you can stay here, you can go back and have, a divine purpose or something like that, and that's what kind of broke me down. That's what made it equally valid was, it wasn't like I was just making an arbitrary decision.
Did you know in that moment what that purpose was?
Yes and no. Like I knew that if I wanted to go back and help people, to just, be a part of other people's lives and help them have more peace and to, fulfill their potential, that would be a great thing to do. But it wasn't like I could clearly articulate, like, yeah, you're going to go back and you're going to help this person do that thing. And you're going to, be this, this world famous individual who's going to, guide millions of people. It wasn't anything like that. It was just like, you know, take this energy and this contentment with you and try to help other people bring it into their own lives.
So would you say, were you inspired by this near-death experience?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And how has that changed your life after experiencing this?
When I came to, like, I went back to bed, and then like when I woke up the next day, it was like, I was kind of in a fugue for a day or two. Like I was just processing everything, but like I kind of started to notice that like, I was moving with purpose. I was, acting with intention. Like I had a lot of issues with self-confidence. Not so much that I was like a wallflower or anything, but like I hesitated a lot. I was indecisive a lot. And I just kind of started noticing that like I just had this energy to just kind of like this will to do and to build and create. And, that bled into my everyday life. I just became an entirely different person. It did change me. It changed a lot of things about the way I did things and the way I thought. And, even my goals and my aspirations just kind of changed. And that guilt that I had beforehand, it wasn't there anymore. Like it was, I realized that whatever I did, as long as I did it to my utmost and tried to be a part of the world that made the world better, it would be fine.
Yeah.
That's what life was for. It wasn't, to fit myself into a mold or anything like that. It was just to help other people and to help the world as a whole in whatever large or small way that I could.
Yeah. Do you sort of bring that philosophy when you are dealing with human related problems, like day-to-day problems, or like even problems that can be quite big for human beings on Earth? Do you go back into like recognizing the scale of the universe and how much more there is out there? And does that kind of help minimize the problem to an extent for you?
Yeah. That's something, a lot of people that I know, they'll gripe at me about is like, cause we'll be talking about just life and issues and things like that. And I'll say, well, just do this, and they're like, man, that is a big thing to say. Like, and I'm like, well, it's not a big deal, and they're like, I don't know what life is like for you, but normal people don't think like that. Normal people don't think on that scale or with that intensity. It's insane. And, but to me, it's just like, if it's possible, it's possible. And if it's not, it's not, but I'm not going to limit my potential and limit myself just because it seems daunting. So it does seem like, to a lot of people that I work on, in my own personal life on a grander scale. I'm not trying to have any ego with that. I'm just, this is what people complain to me about.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard for some people to like have that, that sense of willpower. Like a lot of people just don't believe in themselves as much. But I guess like when you are faced with, the possibility of death and you are brought back and resurrected, it may change. I mean, it seems like you have a great positive attitude now, and it's sometimes hard for people to deal with that. I'm so happy for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to add on to like what he said just now, I think like for a person who, deals with anxiety or knows people who have anxiety, like they're always asked like, so think about the absolute worst case scenario and then work backwards from there. But the worst case scenario for a lot of people could be death. Yeah. Like if I do this, it's going to lead to this and this and this and therefore death. And that is scary enough to stop a person from like acting on their tracks. Whereas for you, it would be quite the opposite. I've seen it. I've been there. I know what it's like, and it's really not all that bad. And so there's, nothing stopping you because of that. Right.
Yeah, I'm not, I'm not just, I'm not just out here looking to throw my life away. Life is precious.
Right, definitely.
Yeah.
But, no, it doesn't. Yes, I have had those moments where I'm just like, well, you know what? If I died, at least I accomplished something dying, and that seems insane, but it's not. You're right. To me, it's not that big of a deal. I don't make decisions like that every day, and I don't make them lightly. But I feel like I have absolutely accepted the fact that I'm uh, to to use a new age phrase that I actually hate. I'm an eternal spirit in a non permanent body. I'm gonna go on even if this flesh doesn't. And as long as I accomplish something worthwhile, and it's not a wasteful sacrifice. No, death doesn't scare me.
You're literally glowing right now while you're saying this. I don't know if you see.
Oh no, that's just
Are you sure? Is that the sun? I don't know, man. You glowing, bro.
No, I have the sun shining through my window.
So, I want to know is have you ever told anybody about this experience, and how do they feel when you talk about this?
I've told a couple of people about it. I don't really talk about it a lot. I had somebody ask me some questions about it a couple of weeks ago, and but most people fall into, and of course I shared the story on Reddit. Most people fall into a couple of different camps, and it was really different when I put the story out on Reddit because I got a lot of positive feedback there. I got a lot of people like, hey man, thank you. That's awesome. And I don't really experience that a lot when I'm talking about things that aren't like day to day, how to pay the bills, etc. A lot of people are naturally skeptical about experiences like that, and they have every right to be. But to someone who's experienced something like that, sometimes people who are skeptical come off as extremely negative. And sometimes people are not only skeptical, but they are intentionally negative. And so I don't really talk about it a lot. I've had a couple of people who just I would talk to them and this would come up in conversation and they just oh yeah, okay, whatever. And that's very disheartening. I don't do it for the attention, but nobody likes to tell a personal story and just have it dismissed out of hand because the other person just doesn't care, doesn't see it as important. You feel kind of disheartened. But so I don't really talk about it a lot because I hadn't really thought that it would get. I hadn't really thought that it was. Previously, I didn't really think it was that important. I thought it was just something personal for me. But when I had shared the story before, it was either outright disbelief or dismissal and very little actual hey man, tell me about that. That was really cool. What do you, let's have a conversation. There wasn't a whole lot of that. So I don't really talk about it a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I suppose and just exactly like how we found you as well on Reddit, it was in an NDE subreddit. So people that are going in there are already curious about it and actually genuinely want to know more. You might have the skeptic or two because they have not experienced it and therefore can't really fully understand it. But there is a level of curiosity there, right? What about your physical condition after this? Has that changed? In any way?
I felt really good. I started actually taking steps to improve my health.
Nice.
I'm not the most healthy person in the world right now, but I'm not very unhealthy either. I've been, making sure that I'm not walking that line between life and death constantly. I'm, trying to do things to make sure that, I am around for my friends and my family for, a long time. And so I've been taking proactive steps to keep my health manageable, at least.
Yeah, that's awesome.
How's the heart doing now? Are you still having your murmurs?
Um, I have less episodes because I try not to put the stress that I know I'm capable of putting on it.
Mm.
I still don't go to a doctor, and that's not a good thing. I just it's I find that things are managed enough that, when I get into, I'm planning a phase of my life where I am going to go and get things like that checked out and, get full analysis on everything. But at the moment, I'm just kind of taking things easy and not pushing myself to my utmost. And it's going pretty well. No real issues there, just kind of, knowing my limits and not exceeding them unnecessarily.
We touched upon religion earlier on the very beginning of the interview. So I'm just interested to know, how did that change, or did that change at all for you after this experience?
Yeah, I actually started to go through a lot of re-examination of my religious beliefs. Um, not specifically because, oh, well, that's not the afterlife I experienced. Maybe they're all wrong, but I started to kind of feel like, there was a greater truth out there. Excuse me. I started to kind of feel like there was a greater truth out there than could be, confined within one experience. And I wanted to investigate. I wanted to dig deeper, and I wanted to see, um, what were other people experiencing? What were they thinking? And, how does this all tie into the experience that I've had and just the general scheme of things? And, I did leave the Christian faith. Uh, I've explored a lot of paths, and, I do classify myself as a different religion now, but I consider myself just generally someone who, I accept the divine as divine. And, from what I can understand, my personal opinion is that, every religion has the same underlying theme and the same underlying, uh, message, which is, help each other, show love, um, don't hurt others if you can absolutely avoid it. And, once I started breaking things down to that level, the actual label of what path I followed didn't really matter as much.
Interesting. So you wouldn't say that you are a fervent believer or devout believer of any one religion, but rather you believe in a philosophy or a practice, or not even a practice, but just a belief from all religions, basically. Like, truth is love, basically.
Yeah, truth is, to me, truth is universal. I do, like I said, I do lean towards certain practices more than others, but I don't discriminate. I don't, I don't judge. It's, I don't know. Sorry. But no, I don't. I do kind of, I do try to see the common thread in all religions, or the majority of religions. And once I saw that, it was just, to me, I saw this underlying, like I said, this underlying truth. And, it kind of took the need for ritualistic expression out of it for me.
I like that. John, would you say that if this near-death experience never happened, would your life turn out differently?
Yeah, I'd have probably just been dead.
That's one way to put it.
Oh man. Yeah, I'm so glad that, I mean, it sucked that you had to go through that, that moment where you nearly died, but I'm so happy that you've, came out a better person.
No, realistically, I was spiraling into a very deep and dark depression. And it wasn't like, as soon as this happened, that all went away. But this was, that the catalyst and the seed that I needed to start to, examine why I was feeling that way, and, to start to be more proactive about my own physical and mental health and spiritual health, and try to, move past those negative emotions and, mentalities that I was holding on to.
Mhm.
And realistically, yeah, I would have, I would have succumbed to either my own poor choices or just life by now if this had not come along for me.
Yeah, I find it really interesting how an experience like this kind of took you away from the human experience and Earth and people on Earth. But yet the one thing that you took away from this was to help other people. So it kind of almost brought you closer to, the human, existence on Earth, I suppose.
Yeah, I realized that, I'm only a human being. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to have regrets. And I was beating myself up over just the fact that I was human, basically. And it was just, it just seemed ridiculous. And I'm not going to say I don't still do that. Like I said, I'm a human. I make mistakes. But it just, once I started looking at it like that and realizing that the mistakes were just part of the learning process and it was just part of the experience, I looked around and there are a lot of people who, they don't allow themselves that freedom of thought. They don't allow themselves to say, you know what, I made a mistake. Let me learn something from it, and do better next time. It's, they beat themselves up. They feel like, well, I made that mistake one time. I'll never make the right decision. Or, well, I made that one bad decision that defines me for the rest of my life. And, I felt like if I could learn from this, if I could learn that, it's possible to grow past that and to live a full life and a full experience and do great things with myself, then why can't I show others, why can't I talk to others and encourage them to take the same lesson, that it's okay to be human, that it's okay to make mistakes. And that was, there's so much misery in the world. And a lot of it is, in my personal opinion, self-inflicted. And if I could help other people to see that a lot of it is just, you holding yourself prisoner, then, maybe that would, make the world a better place just on a personal level.
Yeah, it's amazing. That sounds
beautiful. So, John, before we end this interview, is there a piece of advice or a message that you would like to get across to the listeners? I felt like what you just said was beautiful, but I mean, what would you like to get out to the listeners?
Actually, there's two things. The first is what I just said. We're all just human beings. There's no, we're not in school anymore. Nobody's going to come and write a big red F on our paper for getting the answers wrong. Nobody is born knowing everything. It's okay to make mistakes. Don't beat yourself up just because you the choices that you made didn't turn out the way that you thought they would. That's part of the experience. Get back up, try again. You really can do anything that you put your mind to, as long as you are willing to go through the learning process. And as long as you're willing to trust yourself to either make the right decisions or learn enough to make the right decisions. Trust yourself to learn through the process to make the right decisions. And the second part is, we get so overwhelmed in our day-to-day lives by things that we can't control. We walk around with negative attitudes and just having a bad day over things that we can't control. As individuals, just me personally, or just you personally, we can't control the economy. We can't control the weather. We can't control how other people treat us. But what we can control are things like how we react to those things. Maybe we can't control if we get angry when someone speaks to us negatively, but we can absolutely make the choice to say, okay, this is actually how I'm going to deal with this. This is actually what this situation needs, instead of just going and feeling like I have to do this because that happened. We always have a choice. And it's those choices that we make that actually define who we are as a person. The things that we have, the places we've been, those really don't matter so much as the choices that we made that got us there. And I feel like that's something I would just like others to know and think about.
John, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure speaking to you. And we definitely hope someone can relate to this story. So thank you for being a part of Multispective.
Thank you guys for having me.
If you enjoyed the episode and would like to help support the show, please follow or subscribe. Also, we would love to hear from you. Please give us feedback by rating and reviewing on any of our different platforms listed in the description.
We'd like to recognize our guests who are vulnerable and courageous enough to share their life experiences with the rest of the world. We appreciate your perspective. Thank you for showing us we are human. We would like to give a special thanks to our producer, videographer, sound engineer, and everything else in between, Joe Mills. The show would be nothing without you. I'm Joseph.
And I'm Jenica.
And we are Multispective.